What if everything we've been taught about human history is missing a colossal piece of the puzzle? Picture this: vast cities humming with life, intricate trade networks stretching across continents, and technologies so advanced they defy our understanding of ancient times. All of this not in the distant future, but buried deep in the shadows of our forgotten past. The idea of a global civilization predating recorded history isn't just the stuff of science fiction. It's a tantalizing mystery that challenges the very foundations of what we know. From the eerie similarities between ancient structures on opposite sides of the world to the cryptic myths passed down through generations, there are whispers of something extraordinary lurking beneath the surface of conventional history. Think about the pyramids of Egypt or the massive stone walls of Peru. How did ancient cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, build with such precision, almost as if they shared the same blueprint? And why do so many legends speak of a great flood, a cataclysm that wiped away an advanced world? These aren't just coincidences, they're breadcrumbs leading us toward a startling possibility that long before the rise of Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, or ancient China, there might have been a civilization so vast, so interconnected, that its echoes still resonate in our oldest stories and ruins. But if it existed, why isn't it in our history books? Who or what could have erased it from memory? This is where the real adventure begins. Over the course of this journey, we'll sift through the evidence, the baffling artifacts that don't fit the timeline, the architectural marvels that defy explanation, and the myths that seem too consistent to be mere fantasy. We'll hear from archaeologists who have risked their reputations chasing these clues, and we'll weigh the theories that either rewrite history or expose the limits of our current understanding. Whether you're a skeptic or a true believer, one thing's for certain: by the end, you'll never look at the ancient world the same way again. So buckle up, we're about to dive into one of history's most electrifying mysteries. The question isn't just was there a global civilization before recorded history, it's what was it, and what happened to it. The answers might just rewrite everything. The notion of a prehistoric global civilization isn't just about scattered ancient cultures. It's the radical idea that humanity once thrived as a tightly connected network, sharing ideas, technology, and traditions on a scale that rivals our modern world. Imagine a time when a trader from what's now Turkey could barter with someone in Peru, or when architects in Egypt and Cambodia built temples using eerily similar mathematical principles. This isn't just about isolated marvels, it's about the possibility of a lost web of communication and exchange stretching across continents, long before historians say such connections were possible. Take the pyramids, for instance. The Great Pyramid of Giza and the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica might seem worlds apart, but both were built with staggering precision, aligned to celestial events, and designed with layers of symbolic meaning. Then there's the uncanny resemblance between the megalithic stones of Baalbek in Lebanon and those at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, massive blocks cut and fitted so seamlessly that even today's engineers struggle to explain how it was done. Could these similarities really be random, or do they point to a shared architectural language passed down from an even older, forgotten source? Mythology adds another layer to the puzzle. Cultures separated by oceans tell nearly identical stories: floods that wiped out civilizations, gods who brought advanced knowledge, and golden ages lost to time. The Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, the Hindu tales of Pralaya, and even the biblical story of Noah all describe catastrophic deluges. Indigenous traditions from the Americas to Australia speak of star visitors who taught humanity the secrets of agriculture and astronomy. These stories aren't just folklore, They're potential fragments of a collective memory, scattered like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle waiting to be reassembled. Skeptics argue that humans are simply prone to repeating patterns, that pyramids and flood myths arose independently because they're intuitive responses to universal human experiences. But when you stack up the evidence, the matching symbols, the advanced astronomical knowledge encoded in ancient sites, the sudden leaps in technology with no clear predecessors, it's hard to dismiss it all as coincidence. What if these aren't just parallel developments? What if they're echoes of something far grander, a civilization so vast that its fingerprints are etched into the bedrock of cultures we've long assumed were separate? This theory doesn't just rewrite history, it shatters the timeline. Mainstream archaeology places the first cities in Mesopotamia around 6,000 years ago. But what if urban life, trade, and innovation began millennia earlier, only to be erased by some unimaginable catastrophe? The real mystery isn't just whether such a civilization existed, but how it could vanish so completely that we're only now piecing together its legacy. Whether you see these clues as proof or mere curiosities, one thing's clear: the deeper we dig, the more questions arise, and that's what makes this search so thrilling. Across the world, ancient texts and oral traditions tell stories that sound less like fiction and more like fractured history. The Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations, wrote of the Anunnaki, powerful beings who descended from the heavens, bringing advanced knowledge to humanity. Half a world away, the Hindu epics describe the kingdom of Rama, a land of flying machines and devastating weapons, lost to time after a great war. And then there's Plato's account of Atlantis, a maritime empire of unparalleled sophistication, swallowed by the sea in a single day of catastrophe. On the surface, these seem like isolated legends, but the threads connecting them are too striking to ignore. What's fascinating isn't just that these stories exist, it's how often they mirror one another. The Sumerian flood myth, the Hindu tale of Manu's Ark, and the biblical story of Noah all describe a deluge so vast it wiped the slate of civilization clean. Indigenous tribes in the Americas speak of a time when the stars fell and the earth shook, while Polynesian navigators recount legends of a sunken homeland called Hawaii. Even cultures with no known contact share these recurring themes: a golden age of prosperity, a catastrophic fall, and a lingering sense that something profound was lost. Could these be distorted memories of real events, passed down through generations like a game of ancient telephone? Take Atlantis, for example. Plato wrote about it 2,400 years ago, describing it as a highly advanced society with grand canals, concentric rings of land, and a mysterious power source called orichalcum. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as allegory until underwater ruins like the Bimini Road and the Yonaguni Monument in Japan hinted at submerged structures far older than recorded history. Similarly, the Hindu texts mention Vimanas, flying machines with capabilities that sound eerily like modern aircraft. Skeptics argue these are mere metaphors, but then why do so many unrelated cultures describe technology that seems impossibly advanced for their time? The common counterargument is that humans naturally invent similar stories to explain the unexplainable, that floods, wars, and lost utopias are universal metaphors. But when you examine the details, the parallels become harder to dismiss as coincidence. The Mayan Popol Vuh speaks of a previous race of humans who could see everything under the sky, while the Dogon tribe of Africa accurately described Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye, centuries before telescopes confirmed its existence. These aren't just imaginative tales, they're precise, almost technical accounts that defy easy explanation. Perhaps the most compelling question isn't whether these myths are true, but why they're so consistent across cultures that supposedly never interacted. Did our ancestors witness something extraordinary, a shared experience so profound it became etched into their collective memory? Or is there another possibility, that these stories are remnants of a time when humanity was far more connected than we've been led to believe? Either way, the myths we've long dismissed as fantasy might just be the closest thing we have to a history book from a world we've forgotten. And if that's the case, then deciphering them could be the key to uncovering one of the greatest mysteries of all time. Some of the most bewildering clues about a potential lost civilization don't come from myths or texts, they're carved into the earth itself, in stones so precisely cut and placed that they challenge everything we know about ancient engineering. Take Puma Punku in Bolivia, a sprawling complex where granite and diorite blocks weighing up to 130 tons are fitted together with joints so exact they resemble modern precision machining. The surfaces are smooth as glass, the edges razor sharp, and the intricate notches and holes suggest the use of tools far beyond simple bronze or copper implements. Even more baffling, this site is estimated to be over 1,500 years old, yet the craftsmanship rivals what we'd expect from industrial age technology. How could a culture without the wheel, let alone advanced metallurgy, achieve such perfection? Then there's the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan, a massive underwater formation of terraces, steps, and what appear to be carved pillars, submerged for at least 10,000 years. Mainstream geologists argue it's a natural formation, but the right angles, parallel lines, and symmetrical platforms look eerily deliberate. If human hands did shape this structure, it would predate the oldest known civilizations by thousands of years, pushing the timeline of advanced human activity into uncharted territory. And let's not forget the Great Pyramid of Giza, a marvel so precisely aligned to true north that its margin of error is just 3/60ths of a degree. The builders somehow positioned it to mirror the constellation Orion's belt, encoded mathematical constants like pi into its dimensions, and constructed it using 2.3 million blocks, some hauled from quarries over 500 miles away. The logistics alone would strain modern engineering, yet this was accomplished 4,500 years ago with no cranes, no pulleys, and no written records explaining how it was done. Skeptics insist ancient cultures had centuries to refine their techniques, that patient trial and error could account for these feats. But when you compare sites like Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where 1,000-ton stones are interlocked like puzzle pieces without mortar, or the ancient city of Nan Madol in Micronesia, built atop a coral reef with basalt logs ferried from miles away, the scale of coordination becomes staggering. These aren't isolated examples, they're a global pattern of impossible precision, often in places where the supposed builders left no evidence of intermediate prototypes or failed attempts. It's as if their knowledge appeared fully formed, like a blueprint handed down from some unseen teacher. The most tantalizing question isn't just how these structures were built, but why so many cultures invested unimaginable effort into megalithic projects with no obvious practical purpose. Were they emulating something older, honoring a legacy they barely understood? The stones themselves may hold the answers if only we could decipher their silent language. And until we do, these anomalies stand as silent witnesses to a history far more complex and far more mysterious than we've ever imagined. Around 12,800 years ago, something extraordinary happened. Earth was plunged back into Ice Age conditions almost overnight. This period, known as the Younger Dryas, wasn't just a minor climate blip. Temperatures plummeted, glaciers re-advanced, and ecosystems collapsed. But here's where it gets eerie. This catastrophic shift lines up perfectly with the sudden disappearance of megafauna like mammoths and saber-toothed cats, as well as dramatic upheavals in early human societies. What could have caused such a brutal reversal? One controversial theory suggests it wasn't just natural climate variability, it was a cosmic catastrophe. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that a comet or asteroid fragmented in Earth's atmosphere, triggering a series of apocalyptic events. Proponents point to layers of sediment filled with nanodiamonds, microscopic shock-fractured quartz, and melted rock formations scattered across multiple continents, all telltale signs of an extraterrestrial impact. Then there's the so-called black mat layer, a dark band of soil rich in charcoal and iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in space rocks. These clues paint a picture of firestorms, floods, and a dust cloud so thick it blotted out the sun for years. If true, it wouldn't just explain the extinction of giant animals. It could also account for the mysterious collapse of early human cultures like the Clovis people in North America, whose advanced tool-making traditions vanish from the archaeological record right at this time. But here's the real mind-bender. Could this event have erased something even bigger, an advanced civilization lost to time? Mainstream archaeology insists complex societies didn't exist until thousands of years later, but what if the evidence was obliterated? The impact hypothesis offers a tantalizing explanation for why so many ancient cultures share flood myths and stories of world-ending fire. The biblical tale of Sodom and Gomorrah, the Native American accounts of the sky falling, even Plato's description of Atlantis sinking beneath the waves, could these all be distorted memories of a real planet-wide catastrophe? Skeptics argue the impact evidence is inconclusive, that nanodiamonds and melted rock could have other explanations, but the sheer scale of the Younger Dryas upheaval is hard to dismiss. Something dramatic happened, and it reshaped the planet in ways we're still untangling. Whether it was a comet strike or another disaster, one thing's certain: this event reset the clock for humanity. If a sophisticated culture did exist before the Younger Dryas, its traces might be buried under miles of ice, submerged beneath rising seas, or scattered into dust by the violence of that ancient cataclysm. And that raises a haunting question. If civilization rose once before, only to be wiped clean, could it happen again? The past might hold more warnings than we realize. Göbekli Tepe stands as one of archaeology's most baffling enigmas, a sprawling complex of towering stone pillars arranged in circular formations, each adorned with intricate carvings of animals, symbols, and abstract shapes. What makes this site so extraordinary isn't just its age, estimated at over 11,000 years old, but the fact that it was built by people who, according to conventional history, shouldn't have had the means or the motivation to create something so ambitious. This was a time before farming, before cities, even before pottery. Yet here we have a structure so precisely engineered, it would have required hundreds of workers, advanced planning, and a level of social organization that defies everything we thought we knew about hunter-gatherers. The pillars themselves are monumental, some weighing over 16 tons and standing nearly 20 feet tall. They were quarried from bedrock miles away, transported without wheels or pack animals, and erected with a sophistication that rivals later megalithic sites like Stonehenge, except Göbekli Tepe predates Stonehenge by a staggering 6,000 years. Even more perplexing are the carvings: snakes, foxes, scorpions, and vultures rendered with such artistry and detail. They suggest a symbolic or ritual purpose far beyond mere survival. This wasn't just a gathering place, it was a sanctuary, a temple built by people who clearly had a complex spiritual worldview. But why go to such lengths when daily life was presumably consumed by the struggle for food and shelter? Mainstream archaeology has long held that monumental architecture only emerged after the advent of agriculture, when surplus food allowed societies to specialize and build. Göbekli Tepe turns that assumption on its head. Here, it seems, the temple came first, hunter-gatherers constructed it, then later settled around it. This flips the script on human progress, suggesting that religion or communal ritual might have been the catalyst for civilization, not the other way around. But that raises another question. How did nomadic groups, scattered and mobile, coordinate such a project? Did they possess knowledge or social structures we've underestimated? Some researchers propose an even more radical idea, that Göbekli Tepe isn't an anomaly but a clue, a surviving fragment of a much older, more advanced culture that was wiped out or forgotten. The site was deliberately buried around 8000 BC, filled in with tons of soil as if to preserve it for future generations. Who gave that order and why? Could it have been an attempt to safeguard sacred knowledge after some cataclysm, like the Younger Dryas event we discussed earlier? The precision of the carvings, the alignment of the pillars with celestial events, and the sheer scale of labor involved all hint at a sophistication that feels out of place in the timeline we've been taught. Then there's the location. Göbekli Tepe sits at the northern edge of the Fertile Crescent, a region often called the cradle of civilization. But what if it wasn't the cradle? What if it was the rebirth? A place where survivors of an earlier, lost world regrouped and began anew. The symbols carved into the stones, the emphasis on predatory birds and death, even the layout of the circles, they all echo themes found in later mythologies across the globe. Could this site be a bridge between a forgotten past and the civilizations we recognize today? For now, the stones keep their secrets, but every excavation, every new scan of the surrounding landscape brings us closer to a startling possibility that human history is far older, far stranger, and far more interconnected than we've ever dared to imagine. Göbekli Tepe doesn't just challenge the timeline, it invites us to rewrite it. And as more sites of similar age emerge, like Karahan Tepe just 20 miles away, the puzzle only grows deeper. What other surprises lie buried, waiting to shake the foundations of what we think we know? The Great Sphinx of Giza has stared across the desert for millennia, its enigmatic smile hiding secrets that might rewrite history. While mainstream Egyptology dates this colossal statue to around 2500 BC, the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, not everyone agrees. Enter geologist Robert Schoch, whose groundbreaking analysis of the Sphinx's erosion patterns sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. Schoch noticed something peculiar: the deep, undulating grooves covering the Sphinx's body and enclosure walls didn't resemble the effects of wind and sand, the usual culprits in Egypt's arid climate. Instead, they looked exactly like the marks left by heavy, prolonged rainfall. And that's where the mystery deepens. Egypt hasn't experienced significant rainfall for at least 5,000 years, meaning the Sphinx's erosion must have occurred much earlier, potentially as far back as 7000 BC or even earlier. This places its construction in a time when the Sahara wasn't a desert at all, but a lush green landscape crisscrossed by rivers and seasonal downpours. If Schoch is right, the Sphinx isn't just older than we thought. It might predate dynastic Egypt entirely, built by a culture lost to time. Imagine that a civilization advanced enough to carve a 240-foot limestone monument, yet so ancient that its very existence has been erased from memory. Critics of the water erosion theory argue that other factors like salt weathering or groundwater seepage could explain the Sphinx's wear, but Schoch's findings align with independent research. Climate data confirms the Sahara was indeed wetter between 9000 and 5000 BC, a period known as the African Humid Period, even more compelling. The Sphinx's enclosure walls show erosion patterns consistent with water runoff, while the statue itself bears vertical weathering channels, features seen in places exposed to millennia of rain, not wind-blown sand. Then there's the question of craftsmanship. The Sphinx's head is disproportionately small compared to its body, leading some to speculate it was originally carved as a lion or other animal, then reworked into a pharaoh's likeness by later rulers. Could this explain why the body shows far more erosion than the head? If the original sculpture stood exposed for thousands of years before being modified, it would fit Scott's timeline perfectly. The implications are staggering. If the Sphinx is far older than believed, who built it and why? Some researchers point to the mysterious settlement of Nabta, just west of the Nile, where a prehistoric people constructed a stone circle aligned to the stars around 6000 BC. Others suggest links to the legendary Zep-Tepi, the first time described in ancient Egyptian texts, a golden age when gods walked the earth and imparted sacred knowledge. Could these stories be distant echoes of a real, advanced culture that carved the Sphinx as a monument to their own forgotten glory? Mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, insisting there's no evidence of sophisticated societies in the region before the rise of the pharaohs. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, especially when so much of our past could lie buried beneath shifting sands or submerged by rising seas. The Sphinx's silent gaze seems to taunt us, as if daring humanity to uncover the truth. Until we dig deeper, both literally and figuratively, this iconic monument will remain one of history's most tantalizing riddles. And if Scott's theory holds water, no pun intended, we may need to rethink not just the age of the Sphinx, but the very origins of civilization itself. Imagine holding a map from 1513 that shows the coastline of Antarctica, not as the ice-covered landmass we know today, but as a bare, glacier-free continent. This isn't science fiction, it's the Piri Reis map, a real document drawn by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis using, as he claimed, much older source materials. The map's depiction of Antarctica's Queen Maud Land is shockingly accurate, matching modern sonar surveys of the land beneath the ice. But here's the catch: Antarctica has been buried under miles of ice for at least 12,000 years. So how could a 16th century mapmaker or his alleged ancient sources have known what lay beneath? This isn't an isolated anomaly. The Babylonian world map, carved into clay tablets over 2,600 years ago, shows the Earth as a flat disk surrounded by a circular ocean, with distant lands labeled where the sun is not seen. While crude at first glance, its depiction of the Euphrates River and surrounding regions is surprisingly precise. Even more baffling is the Orontius Phineus map from 1531, which not only outlines Antarctica in stunning detail, but places mountain ranges and rivers where we now know they exist under the ice. These maps share a common thread. They claim to be copies of far older originals, fragments of knowledge passed down from civilizations lost to time. Mainstream historians dismiss these maps as lucky guesses or artistic interpretations, but the sheer volume of accurate geographical data is hard to ignore. Take the Portolan charts, medieval navigational maps used by European sailors. Unlike typical maps of the era, which were symbolic rather than practical, these charts feature precise coastlines, latitude markers, and even wind patterns, knowledge that shouldn't have existed until the age of exploration. Some researchers argue these weren't products of medieval ingenuity but surviving copies of ancient maritime guides, possibly from the legendary Library of Alexandria or even earlier seafaring cultures. The most compelling argument for lost knowledge lies in the mathematics behind these maps. To create accurate representations of coastlines, especially over long distances, cartographers would need to understand spherical trigonometry, a branch of mathematics supposedly developed in the Hellenistic period. Yet maps like the Piri Reis and Orontius Phineus exhibit this precision centuries before it was formally documented. Could this imply that advanced mathematical and navigational techniques were once widespread, only to be forgotten and rediscovered millennia later? Skeptics counter that these maps are cherry-picked examples, that errors and inaccuracies prove they're human-made, not inherited from some advanced precursor civilization. But what if the mistakes are the most revealing part? Many of these maps place landmasses in the wrong locations or distort sizes, flaws consistent with copying and recopying over generations, like a game of ancient telephone. The core accuracy, though, suggests an original source of startling sophistication. The implications are staggering. If these maps truly preserve fragments of prehistoric knowledge, they hint at a civilization capable of global exploration, one that charted the world long before the rise of Mesopotamia or ancient Egypt. Who were these seafarers? How did their knowledge survive, even in fragments across thousands of years? And most hauntingly, what else might they have known that we've yet to rediscover? The maps don't just challenge our timeline of human achievement, they suggest that history as we know it might be missing entire chapters. And until we find those missing pages, the truth remains just out of reach, hidden beneath layers of ice and layers of time. From the windswept plains of Salisbury to the sun-baked sands of Egypt, ancient builders left behind a puzzle etched in stone monuments that don't just point to the sky, but seem to whisper to one another across continents. Stonehenge's towering sarcens frame the summer solstice sunrise with uncanny precision, while halfway around the world, the Great Pyramid of Giza aligns to true north with an error margin smaller than a fraction of a degree. Over in Cambodia, the temples of Angkor Wat mirror the Draco constellation's pattern, their corridors designed to catch the equinox light in ways that illuminate hidden carvings. These aren't isolated feats, they're threads in a tapestry of celestial knowledge so consistent, it hints at something far more profound than coincidence. What's truly startling isn't just that these sites track solar or lunar cycles, it's how many of them share invisible geometric ties. Take the Great Pyramid's coordinates. Its latitude aligns with the speed of light when converted into numerical values, a quirk that might be dismissed as chance until you realize its meridian passes through more sacred sites per mile than any other line on Earth. Follow this invisible thread, and you'll intersect with Delphi, the Temple Mount, and even the ancient city of Ur. Meanwhile, Stonehenge sits at a latitude where the midsummer sun rises directly over the heel stone, a phenomenon that repeats at nearly identical latitudes in Peru's Intihuatana stone and Japan's Aomori pyramids. The odds of these alignments occurring randomly, astronomically low. The mathematical precision deepens when you examine the distances between these sites. The Great Pyramid and Stonehenge are separated by 3,600 nautical miles, a figure that just happens to match 1/10 of Earth's circumference. Angkor Wat, in turn, lies precisely 72 degrees east of Giza, a number that mirrors the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that completes every 25,920 years. These aren't arbitrary numbers, they're fundamental to understanding our planet's movements. So how could cultures separated by oceans and millennia encode the same advanced geodetic knowledge into their architecture? One controversial theory suggests these sites were part of a global surveying system, a prehistoric GPS, designed to map the planet with stunning accuracy. Proponents point to the recurring use of sacred geometry, the golden ratio in the Parthenon, pi encoded in the Great Pyramid's dimensions, and Fibonacci sequences woven into Mayan temples. Even more compelling are the megalithic yard measurements found from Scotland to Easter Island, a standardized unit of length that appears in structures built thousands of years apart. Could this imply the existence of an ancient master builder culture that disseminated blueprints across the world? Skeptics argue that humans naturally gravitate toward significant astronomical events, that solstices and equinoxes would inevitably inspire similar structures. But when you overlay these sites on a map, the geometric patterns defy simple explanation. The pyramids of Giza, Teotihuacan, and Xi'an in China form a near-perfect great circle around the globe, while the Nazca lines, though visible only from above, seem to chart underground waterways with laser-like precision. These aren't just symbolic gestures, they're technical achievements that would challenge modern engineers. The most tantalizing question isn't whether these alignments exist, but why they're so meticulously replicated. Were ancient cultures tapping into a forgotten science, a unified understanding of Earth's dimensions passed down from an even older civilization? Or is there another possibility, that these sites were intentionally placed as markers, a celestial clock or global network meant to guide or even awaken something in humanity? The stones remain silent, but their coordinates speak volumes, and as we uncover more of these hidden connections, the line between myth and history grows ever thinner. Buried beneath the waves off the coast of Greece lies one of history's most confounding artifacts, the Antikythera Mechanism. Discovered in a shipwreck over a century ago, this intricate bronze device, dating back to around 80 BC, contains a labyrinth of interlocking gears, dials, and inscriptions that functioned as an astronomical calculator. It could predict lunar eclipses, track the cycles of the Olympic Games, and even model the irregular orbit of the moon with a precision that wouldn't be matched until the Renaissance. For context, clocks with this level of complexity didn't reappear in Europe for another 1500 years. How did ancient Greeks, or whoever crafted this marvel, develop such advanced engineering without the tools or textbooks we assume are necessary for technological innovation? Equally puzzling is the Baghdad Battery, a set of clay jars unearthed in modern-day Iraq, each containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, these vessels could generate a small electric charge. Dating to the Parthian period around 2,000 years ago, these objects hint at a rudimentary understanding of electrochemistry centuries before Volta's famous battery in the 1800s. While skeptics argue they might have been used for electroplating jewelry or religious rituals, the fact remains, someone in antiquity was tinkering with principles we'd consider groundbreaking even in the early industrial age. Then there's the precision of ancient machining. The granite boxes in the Serapeum of Saqqara, Egypt, weigh up to 100 tons each, with surfaces so flawlessly flat and corners so perfectly square that they deviate by less than 1/100th of an inch, a tolerance achievable today only with computer-guided diamond-tipped tools. Similarly, the vitrified stone walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru fit together so tightly that not even a blade of grass can slip between them, yet they were carved and assembled without mortar or metal tools. These aren't just impressive feats of manual labor, they suggest a mastery of materials and physics that defies conventional timelines of technological progress. The common thread: these artifacts don't exist in isolation. They're scattered across time and geography, yet they share a fingerprint of sophistication that feels out of place. Take the ancient Indian texts describing Vimanas, flying machines powered by mercury vortex engines, or the Chinese records of directional compass chariots, used for navigation long before the magnetic compass became widespread. Even the Roman Emperor Nero reportedly used an emerald lens to watch gladiatorial games, a detail that hints at advanced optics lost to history. Mainstream scholars often attribute these anomalies to isolated genius, the brilliance of a single culture or inventor. But what if there's another explanation? Could these technologies be remnants of a broader, older knowledge system, one that was fragmented and forgotten after a cataclysm like the Younger Dryas? The Antikythera Mechanism, for instance, wasn't just a one-off. Cicero wrote of similar devices in his time, describing a bronze sphere built by Archimedes that replicated the motions of the heavens. If such inventions were more widespread than we've been led to believe, their sudden disappearance becomes its own mystery. Perhaps the most compelling question isn't how these technologies were made, but why they vanished. Did war, climate shifts, or some other disaster disrupt the transmission of knowledge? Or were these ideas deliberately suppressed, reserved for elite priesthoods, or lost in the destruction of libraries like Alexandria's? The artifacts themselves offer no easy answers, only whispers of a world where the boundary between ancient and advanced blurs into something far more intriguing. And with every new discovery, the puzzle grows deeper, challenging us to rethink not just the past, but the very nature of human ingenuity. Deep in the remote cliffs of Mali, the Dogon people have safeguarded a secret that defies conventional history. For generations, their oral traditions have described Sirius B, a dense, invisible companion star to Sirius, with startling accuracy, long before telescopes confirmed its existence in the 19th century. They knew it was incredibly dense, calling it Potolo, the smallest thing there is, and correctly stated it orbits Sirius every 50 years. This isn't just vague star lore. It's precise astronomy from a culture without written language or optical instruments. Where did this knowledge come from? The Dogon themselves say it was handed down by the Nommo, amphibious beings who descended from the sky in a spinning vessel, bringing wisdom to their ancestors. While this sounds like classic ancient astronaut lore, there's another possibility, one that ties back to our broader mystery. Could the Dogon's Sirius lore be a surviving fragment of a much older, advanced human civilization's knowledge? Imagine a time when star maps and celestial mechanics were understood not by isolated tribes, but by a network of cultures since lost to time. The Nommo might not be extraterrestrial visitors, but mythologized figures from a forgotten maritime or astronomical tradition. Consider this: the ancient Egyptians also revered Sirius, linking its heliacal rising to the Nile's floods and marking it as central to their calendar. Greek and Babylonian astronomers wrote of Sirius's reddish companion, a puzzling detail since Sirius B is white unless they were referencing atmospheric distortion or even older, now lost observations. Even more intriguing, the Dogon's 50-year orbital period for Sirius B is off by just 0.6 of a year compared to modern measurements. That's not guesswork, it's data. Skeptics argue the Dogon could have learned about Sirius B from European visitors or missionaries in the early 20th century, but the tribe's accounts predate these contacts by centuries. Others suggest the Nommo story is symbolic, representing initiatory knowledge passed down through secret societies. Yet the specificity of the Dogon's astronomical details resists easy dismissal. Their knowledge includes references to Sirius C, a hypothetical third star still debated by astronomers today, another uncanny hit. The real puzzle isn't whether the Dogon knew about Sirius B, but how their lore fits into a global pattern of ancient precision. From the Babylonians tracking Jupiter's motions to Polynesian navigators steering by star paths we've only recently mapped, these aren't isolated flashes of genius. They're breadcrumbs, hints of a time when humanity's grasp of the cosmos might have been far more sophisticated than we've been led to believe. The Dogon's story doesn't just challenge the timeline of scientific discovery, it suggests that somewhere, buried in the interplay of myth and memory, lies a lost chapter in humanity's relationship with the stars. And if one tribe could preserve such secrets against all odds, what else might still be waiting to be remembered? beneath the waves, scattered across the ocean floor like pieces of a shattered mosaic, lie ruins that defy our understanding of history. Take Japan's Yonaguni Monument, a massive submerged structure off the coast of Okinawa. Its terraced platforms, sharp right angles, and what appear to be carved steps and pillars look unmistakably man-made. Geologists argue it could be a natural formation, but the symmetry and repetitive patterns suggest something more deliberate, something human. If this isn't just a quirk of geology, then who built it? And when the last time this site was above water was at least 10,000 years ago, long before conventional timelines say advanced societies existed. Then there's the discovery off the coast of Cuba, where sonar scans revealed a sprawling complex of stone structures half a mile beneath the surface. Arranged in geometric patterns resembling urban grids, these megaliths bear an uncanny resemblance to the ruins of ancient cities like those found in Mesoamerica or the Mediterranean. But here's the catch. For this site to have been above water, sea levels would have had to be dramatically lower, placing its construction squarely in the aftermath of the last ice age. Similar underwater ruins have been found near India's Gulf of Combat, where dredging brought up pottery, human bones, and artifacts carbon dated to over 9,000 years old. These aren't isolated anomalies. They're part of a global pattern of sunken structures that whisper of a forgotten chapter in human history. The most compelling clue lies in the timing. Around 12,000 years ago, as glaciers melted and sea levels rose nearly 400 feet, vast stretches of coastline vanished beneath the waves. This wasn't a slow process. Some studies suggest catastrophic flooding could have submerged entire regions within generations. Plato's account of Atlantis sinking in a single day and night might sound like myth, but what if it's a distorted memory of real events? Indigenous cultures from the Americas to Australia tell eerily similar stories of ancestral homelands lost to rising waters. The Aboriginal people of Tasmania speak of a land bridge that once connected them to the mainland, while the Haida of the Pacific Northwest describe villages swallowed by the sea. These aren't just legends, they're potential oral histories of a world reshaped by climate change. But why haven't we found more? The answer might lie in the challenges of underwater archaeology. Exploring these sites requires cutting-edge technology. From submersibles to advanced sonar mapping tools we've only had for decades. The ocean floor remains one of the least explored places on Earth, and many of these ruins are buried under centuries of sediment or hidden in treacherous deep water trenches. Even when we do find them, dating submerged structures is notoriously difficult. Saltwater erodes organic materials, and shifting currents can scatter artifacts, leaving only the most durable stones behind. The implications are staggering. If these ruins are indeed remnants of pre-flood civilizations, they could rewrite our understanding of human progress. Imagine cities thriving on now submerged coastlines, their inhabitants trading, building, and innovating millennia before the rise of Sumer or the Indus Valley. What kind of knowledge might have been lost when the waters rose? Could advanced maritime cultures have mapped the world, leaving behind megalithic markers like Yonaguni or Cuba's underwater city as silent witnesses to their existence? Skeptics rightly point out that nature can create deceptively artificial-looking formations. Wave action, tectonic shifts, and coral growth can mimic human craftsmanship. But when you stack up the evidence, the precise angles, the clustered artifacts, the global distribution of these sites, it's harder to dismiss them all as geological quirks. The real mystery isn't just whether these ruins are man-made, but what they might tell us about the resilience of human civilization in the face of cataclysm. If our ancestors could build and adapt in a world of rising seas, what does that mean for us today? The oceans guard their secrets well, but with every new discovery, the waters grow a little less murky and the past a little more alive. Language carries more than just words. It carries history hidden in the syllables we speak and the sounds we've passed down for generations. When you hear the Sanskrit word loka, meaning world, and compare it to the Lakota Sioux term Lakota, which translates to the people of this world, the resemblance is hard to ignore. Or consider the ancient Sumerian word Dingir, referring to divine beings, and the Maya term Tziyakol, used for gods, both sharing a similar phonetic structure despite emerging from cultures separated by oceans and millennia. These linguistic echoes aren't just coincidences, they're potential fragments of a puzzle suggesting that humanity's earliest stories might have been written in a shared vocabulary long before borders divided us. The idea of a proto-language, a mother tongue from which all others descended, isn't new. Linguists have long debated the existence of Proto-Indo-European, a reconstructed language believed to have spawned everything from Latin to Hindi. But what if the connections run even deeper? Researchers like Dr. Joseph Greenberg proposed that certain word roots appear across continents, hinting at a linguistic web stretching back to a time when human societies were far more interconnected than we've assumed. Take the word for mother, mata in Sanskrit, mada in Spanish, mama in Mandarin, and even uma in Proto-Uto-Aztecan, spoken by ancient Native American tribes. These similarities persist despite tens of thousands of years of separation. Could they be relics of a time when our ancestors spoke a common language, perhaps as part of a vast, unified culture? Critics argue that basic words like mama arise naturally from infant babbling, or that trade and migration could explain later linguistic overlaps. But the anomalies grow harder to dismiss when you examine specialized terms. The Basque language, for instance, shares uncanny parallels with ancient Georgian, even though the two regions lie over 2,000 miles apart with no known historical contact. Similarly, the Aboriginal languages of Australia contain grammatical structures found in ancient Dravidian tongues from India, a link that defies conventional timelines of human migration. Even more intriguing are the shared metaphors. Multiple cultures describe knowledge as light and ignorance as darkness, or depict time as a river. These aren't just linguistic quirks, they're conceptual frameworks that suggest a shared way of seeing the world. The most controversial twist comes from the work of linguists like Dr. Merritt Rulon, who identified global cognates words with similar meanings and sounds across unrelated language families. His examples include tik or tika, meaning finger or one, in languages as diverse as Proto-Indo-European, Mayan, and even some African dialects. If these connections are real, they imply a linguistic root stretching back to a period when humanity might have been far more unified, perhaps before the cataclysms that scattered our ancestors across the globe. But here's where the mystery deepens. Languages don't just borrow words, they carry myths. The flood narrative appears in over 200 cultures worldwide, often with strikingly similar details: a warning, a boat, a survival family. The story of a great sky serpent or dragon spans from China to the Aztecs to the Norse. These aren't just stories, they're linguistic and thematic fingerprints, suggesting that our oldest tales might have traveled not through written records, but through a shared oral tradition passed down from a time before history began. Whether these linguistic threads point to a global civilization or simply the ingenuity of early human migration remains hotly debated. But one thing is certain: every time we speak, we might be whispering fragments of a lost world, a time when the divisions between us were fewer and the connections far stronger. The words we use today could be the last surviving echoes of a civilization so ancient, its name has vanished from memory, leaving only its language behind, hidden in plain sight. Our DNA might hold the most compelling clues yet to humanity's forgotten past. Over the past decade, genetic research has uncovered startling patterns in ancient human migration, traces of interbreeding and movement that defy the traditional narrative of isolated, disconnected cultures. Take the case of the mysterious Denisovans, an ancient human relative whose genetic fingerprints appear not just in Siberia, but in modern populations across Southeast Asia, Australia, and even the Americas. How could a group from the frozen Altai Mountains leave their mark on people thousands of miles away, unless there were networks of interaction spanning continents far earlier than we've imagined? Then there's the enigma of haplogroup X, a distinct genetic lineage found in scattered pockets from the Near East to the Great Lakes region of North America. Unlike other Native American haplogroups which trace back to Siberian ancestors, X appears to have arrived via a different route, possibly across the Atlantic. Even more intriguing, its highest concentration outside the Americas is among the Druze people of the Levant and the Basques of Europe, two groups with deep, isolated histories. These genetic threads don't just suggest random migration, they hint at purposeful movement, trade, or even shared ancestry among seemingly unrelated cultures. The plot thickens when we examine the genetic legacy of early farmers. Studies of ancient European DNA reveal that agriculture didn't spread solely through the diffusion of ideas. It came with waves of people from Anatolia who carried not just seeds but distinct genetic markers. Yet some of these markers appear in places they shouldn't, like pre-Columbian South America, where traces of Polynesian DNA have been found among indigenous groups. The conventional timeline says Polynesians couldn't have reached the Americas until around 1200 CE, but the genetics tell a different story, one of transoceanic contact millennia earlier. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in what geneticists call ghost populations, ancestral groups that left no physical remains, only echoes in modern DNA. In West Africa, researchers have identified traces of an unknown human lineage that diverged from ours over 500,000 years ago. In the Amazon, some tribes carry fragments of DNA from a people with no known archaeological record. These genetic shadows could represent lost branches of humanity, or perhaps survivors of a calamity that erased most evidence of their existence. Skeptics argue that genetics can be overinterpreted, that shared markers might stem from ancient hunter-gatherer wanderings rather than organized civilizations. But when you combine these findings with the archaeological and mythological evidence, the sudden appearance of advanced farming techniques in disparate regions, the global flood myths, the megalithic structures aligned to the stars, a pattern emerges. Our ancestors weren't just isolated tribes scratching out an existence. They were part of a dynamic, interconnected world, trading genes, ideas, and technologies across vast distances. The real question isn't whether ancient humans moved, it's why they moved so far, so often, and with such apparent purpose. Were they fleeing disasters, following lost trade routes, or seeking remnants of a world they barely remembered? The answers lie coiled in our cells, waiting to be unraveled. And with every new genome sequenced, the story grows more complex and more extraordinary. Ancient astronaut theory has captured imaginations for decades, fueled by books like Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods, and countless documentaries speculating about extraterrestrial visitors in humanity's distant past. The core idea is provocative, that advanced beings from the stars intervened in human development, gifting our ancestors with technology, architecture, and knowledge that seem inexplicable for their time. But what if we've been asking the wrong question? Instead of looking to the stars for answers, perhaps we should be looking deeper into our own forgotten history. Consider the recurring motifs in ancient texts: the Sumerian Anunnaki, the Vedic Vimanas, the Egyptian gods who descended in celestial boats. These stories share eerie parallels across cultures that supposedly had no contact. Mainstream scholars often dismiss them as myth-making, but what if they're distorted accounts of real, advanced humans? Imagine a scenario where a sophisticated civilization, perhaps one that thrived before the Younger Dryas cataclysm, survived in scattered pockets. To less technologically developed cultures, their knowledge and tools would have seemed nothing short of divine. A helicopter would be a flying chariot. Genetic engineering could be framed as creating life from clay, and advanced medicine might be remembered as healing miracles. The ancient astronaut theory's weakness isn't its premise that someone influenced early civilizations. It's the assumption that those someones had to be extraterrestrial. The alternative is even more tantalizing, that a human society now lost to time achieved heights we're only now rediscovering. Take the Dogon's knowledge of Sirius B or the precision of megalithic constructions like Puma Punku. These don't necessarily demand alien intervention, just a forgotten chapter of human innovation. Even the Bible's Nephilim, described as giants or fallen ones, could be echoes of a physically and intellectually dominant group whose true nature was mythologized over millennia. Critics argue that absent physical evidence of such a civilization, the theory is just speculative storytelling. But as we've seen with submerged ruins like Yonaguni and the Gulf of Combat, the evidence might be hiding in plain sight, buried under oceans or misinterpreted as natural formations. The real irony: by fixating on extraterrestrials, we might be overlooking a truth more profound, that humanity's past is far more complex, interconnected, and technologically vibrant than we've dared to imagine. The ancient astronaut narrative thrives because it fills gaps in our understanding, but those gaps don't inherently point to aliens. They could just as easily point to us, to a time when human achievement soared before some catastrophe reset the board. Whether those gods were visitors from another world or survivors of a lost golden age, their legacy lingers in our myths, our monuments, and perhaps even our DNA. And that's a mystery worth unraveling. History isn't just written by the victors, it's curated by institutions, shaped by funding priorities, and filtered through the lens of what's deemed academically acceptable. When it comes to the idea of a lost global civilization, mainstream archaeology often dismisses it as fringe speculation, not because the evidence is weak, but because challenging established timelines would upend careers, textbooks, and entire museum collections built around the current narrative. Think about it. If a single discovery proved that advanced societies existed 12,000 years ago, what would that mean for the countless PhDs, research papers, and museum exhibits based on the idea that civilization began with Sumer or Egypt? The resistance isn't necessarily a conspiracy. It's the natural friction of a system built on consensus, but institutional inertia only explains part of the pushback. Funding plays a massive role. Grant committees and universities prioritize projects that fit within accepted paradigms, leaving researchers who pursue radical theories scrambling for resources. Imagine an archaeologist proposing to search for a pre-Younger Dryas metropolis under the Gulf of Mexico. Without peer-reviewed precedent, securing financial backing becomes nearly impossible. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Unconventional ideas struggle to get funding, so they lack the data to gain legitimacy, which in turn justifies their continued exclusion from academic discourse. It's not malice, it's how systems protect their own stability. Then there's the human element: ego. Scholars spend decades mastering a specific framework, only to have newcomers suggest everything they've studied might be a footnote in a much older story. The backlash against geologist Robert Schoch's water erosion theory for the Sphinx is a prime example. When he proposed the monument might be thousands of years older than believed, Egyptologists didn't just disagree, they ridiculed the idea despite the geological evidence. This isn't unique to archaeology, it's a pattern seen in every scientific revolution, from Galileo's telescopes to Alfred Wegener's continental drift theory. Paradigms shift slowly, and those invested in the old model rarely surrender gracefully. But what about deliberate suppression? While outright conspiracies are rare, there are documented cases of artifacts disappearing or being ignored because they don't fit the narrative. The infamous Baghdad Battery, for instance, was initially dismissed as a curiosity rather than explored as evidence of ancient electrochemical knowledge. Similarly, the Antikythera Mechanism spent decades labeled an astrolabe before modern imaging revealed its true complexity. These aren't cover-ups in the shadowy sense, they're symptoms of a system that struggles to process anomalies. When an artifact contradicts the timeline, it's easier to shelve it than rewrite the textbooks. The deeper issue is control over narrative. History shapes identity, politics, and power structures. If humanity has risen and collapsed before, what does that say about the inevitability of our current systems? Could that knowledge empower alternative worldviews? Whether it's conscious or not, the gatekeepers of history have a vested interest in maintaining a story that aligns with the status quo. The irony, some of archaeology's greatest breakthroughs, like the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, came from outsiders willing to question the rules. The stones don't lie, but their truths often wait centuries for someone willing to listen. Plato's Atlantis stands as one of history's most tantalizing riddles, a story so vivid, so detailed, that it straddles the line between myth and lost history. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC, Plato describes a maritime empire of unparalleled sophistication, with concentric rings of land and water, grand canals, and a mysterious metal called orichalcum that gleamed like fire. This civilization, he claims, ruled over parts of Europe and Africa before angering the gods and sinking into the sea, in a single day and night of misfortune. But here's what's fascinating. Plato insists this wasn't fiction. He frames it as a true account passed down from Egyptian priests to the Athenian lawgiver Solon, who then shared it with his ancestor Critias. If Atlantis was just allegory, why go to such lengths to root it in real-world sources? The search for Atlantis has led explorers to every corner of the map. Some point to the island of Santorini, where the catastrophic eruption of Thera around 1600 BC obliterated the Minoan civilization, a culture known for its advanced art, architecture, and maritime trade. The timing fits Plato's mention of Atlantis's fall 9,000 years before Solon, but only if you assume Plato's years were actually lunar cycles or a transcription error. Others argue for the Richat structure in Mauritania, a natural geological formation that, from above, eerily resembles Plato's description of concentric rings. Then there's the wildcard theory, Antarctica, once ice-free and positioned differently due to tectonic shifts, as suggested by the controversial Piri Reis map. But the real intrigue lies in Plato's clues about Atlantean society. He describes a culture with advanced engineering, including hot and cold running water, massive harbors, and temples plated in precious metals. These details don't match any known civilization of his time, yet they align oddly with archaeological anomalies like the aqueducts of pre-Incan Tiwanaku or the vitrified stone walls of Peru. Even the name Atlantis might hold a clue derived from Atlas, the titan who held up the heavens. The Berber people of North Africa have oral traditions of an ancestral homeland called Atala, while the Aztecs spoke of Aztlan, a paradise lost to the east. Could these all be distant echoes of the same memory? Skeptics, of course, argue that Plato invented Atlantis as a moral fable, a cautionary tale about hubris and divine retribution. And yet, his descriptions are oddly specific. He pinpoints Atlantis's location beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar, placing it in the Atlantic Ocean. He notes its size as larger than Libya and Asia combined, though this could be hyperbole or a mistranslation. Most compellingly, he claims the story was preserved in Egyptian records at Sais, a city known for its vast archives. Those records are long lost, but the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, especially when so much of antiquity has been destroyed by time, war, or natural disaster. The most provocative question isn't whether Atlantis existed as Plato described it, but whether it represents a garbled memory of something older. Imagine a pre-flood civilization, its survivors scattered by rising seas, their stories diluted over millennia until only fragments remained. Plato's account might be one of those fragments, a distorted reflection of a real culture that thrived before history began. From the submerged ruins of the Bahamas to the sunken cities off India's coast, the ocean floor keeps yielding hints that we've barely scratched the surface of humanity's past. Atlantis endures not because it's a fairy tale, but because it feels like a puzzle missing just one crucial piece, a piece that, if found, could rewrite our understanding of who we are and where we come from. The Indus Valley civilization flourished along the banks of the mighty Indus River over 4,000 years ago, a contemporary to the pyramids of Egypt and the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, yet its story remains half-told. While we marvel at the precision of Mohenjo-Daro's grid-planned streets and the sophistication of its underground drainage systems, the civilization's greatest mystery lies in the hundreds of tiny, intricate symbols etched into seals, pottery, and tablets. This script, composed of over 400 distinct characters, has resisted decipherment for over a century, locking away secrets that could rewrite our understanding of the ancient world. What makes this undeciphered script so tantalizing isn't just its existence, it's the clues hidden in its structure. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, which were cracked using bilingual inscriptions like the Rosetta Stone, the Indus script appears in short, isolated bursts, often just 5 or 6 symbols long. Some researchers argue it's a true writing system, encoding a lost language, while others suggest it might be a complex system of proto-writing, symbols representing concepts rather than words or sounds. The debate rages on, but one thing's certain: without a linguistic key, we're left guessing at the daily lives, beliefs, and even the names of the people who built these astonishing cities. The implications stretch far beyond linguistics. Indus Valley artifacts have turned up in distant Mesopotamia, suggesting a trade network spanning thousands of miles. Their standardized weights and measures hint at a centralized economic system, while the absence of obvious palaces or temples challenges our assumptions about power and religion in the ancient world. Were they a peaceful, egalitarian society, as some archaeologists propose, or does their script conceal tales of kings, wars, or gods we've yet to discover? The absence of monumental statues or grand tombs only deepens the enigma. This was a civilization that prioritized function over glorification, leaving behind wells instead of war memorials and bathhouses instead of pyramids. Even more intriguing are the parallels with other ancient cultures. The Indus city's advanced water management mirrors systems found in contemporaneous Mesopotamia, while their brick sizes match those used in distant Sumer. Could these similarities point to a shared cultural exchange, or even a common predecessor now lost to time? The sudden decline of the civilization around 1900 BC adds another layer of mystery. Was it climate change, invading forces, or something more catastrophic that scattered its people and silenced their language? Until we crack the code, the Indus Valley civilization remains a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Every attempted decipherment, from claims it's an early form of Sanskrit to theories linking it to the obscure Proto-Elamite script of Iran, has hit a wall. But with advances in artificial intelligence and statistical analysis, new generations of researchers are approaching the problem in ways early scholars couldn't have imagined. The answer may lie not in a single Rosetta Stone, but in the subtle patterns of symbol frequency and placement that only machine learning can detect. What if the script's decipherment reveals connections to even older, undocumented cultures? Or worse, what if it confirms that this astonishing society left no written records of its history at all, that their symbols were merely bureaucratic notations and their stories died with them? The silence of the Indus script is a reminder of how fragile history can be, and how much of the human story might already be lost beneath the silt of time. For now, their cities stand as silent witnesses, their secrets locked in symbols we can see but cannot read, waiting for the day when someone or something finally breaks the code. Easter Island's towering Moai statues gaze inland with hollow eyes, their backs to the sea as if guarding secrets lost to time. These monolithic figures, some weighing over 80 tons and standing 30 feet tall, were carved from volcanic rock by a people with no metal tools, no wheels, and no large animals to assist them. Yet they were moved miles across rugged terrain and erected on massive stone platforms called ahu. The conventional explanation that islanders used log rollers and ropes has been challenged by recent experiments showing how the statues might have been walked upright with a system of coordinated rocking motions. But even this ingenious method raises deeper questions. How did a population that never exceeded a few thousand develop such sophisticated engineering knowledge in complete isolation? The real mystery isn't just how the Moai were moved, but why their construction suddenly stopped. The island's oral traditions speak of a golden age when the statues walked to their places, followed by a time of conflict and famine. Archaeological evidence supports this. Pollen samples reveal the island was once lush with palm forests, but by the time Europeans arrived in 1722, the landscape was barren. The prevailing narrative blames ecological collapse. The islanders, it's said, deforested their home to transport Moai, triggering soil erosion and societal breakdown. But this theory ignores startling anomalies. The Rapa Nui people's own legends tell of a homeland called Hiva, a distant land swallowed by the sea. Their kinship with other Polynesian cultures is well documented, but some researchers argue their sailing prowess hints at connections even farther afield. Consider the sweet potato, a staple crop native to South America that was growing on Easter Island when Europeans arrived. Genetic studies confirm it was introduced centuries before any known trans-Pacific contact. How did it get there? The answer might lie in the island's ancient name, Te Pito o Te Henua, the navel of the world. This wasn't just poetic metaphor, it could reflect a memory of when the island was part of a broader network. Maritime historian Thor Heyerdahl famously demonstrated with the Kon-Tiki expedition that prehistoric sailors could have crossed the Pacific on balsa wood rafts. Could the Rapa Nui have been the last remnants of a seafaring culture that once spanned the ocean, their Moai serving as waypoints or markers for a civilization we've yet to uncover? The parallels with other lost cultures are striking. Like the Maya or the inhabitants of Göbekli Tepe, the Rapa Nui displayed sudden bursts of sophistication followed by decline. Their Rongorongo script, a series of glyphs carved on wooden tablets, remains undeciphered but bears curious resemblances to symbols found in distant Peru and even ancient India. Were these coincidences or fragments of a shared symbolic language? The island's most haunting clue lies underwater. Off its coast, divers have found what appear to be submerged platforms and roads, structures that mirror the Ahu but lie beneath centuries of rising seas. If verified, these could suggest the island was once larger, its people more numerous before some cataclysm reshaped their world. Easter Island's story resonates because it mirrors our own anxieties. A thriving society, advanced for its time, allegedly brought low by environmental short-sightedness. But what if the truth is more complex? What if the Moai aren't just relics of isolation, but the last echoes of a culture that was far more connected and far more knowledgeable than we've assumed? The statue's silent lips may never speak, but their presence asks us a profound question. How many other navels of the world lie forgotten, waiting to be rediscovered? The Olmec civilization bursts onto the scene with all the subtlety of one of their famous colossal stone heads, massive, enigmatic, and impossible to ignore. Emerging around 1500 BC in the swampy lowlands of what's now Mexico, these people carved 20-ton basalt portraits with helmets resembling those of ancient football players, transported them 50 miles without wheels or beasts of burden, and arranged them in ceremonial complexes aligned to celestial events. But here's the twist. The Olmecs appear to have had no slow, gradual development. Their earliest known city, San Lorenzo, springs up fully formed with advanced urban planning, drainage systems, and even a rudimentary writing system. It's as if they arrived already holding a blueprint for civilization. Where did this knowledge come from? The mystery deepens when you examine their iconography. Olmec art is riddled with motifs that echo culture's oceans-away jaguar deities resembling the Amazon's shape-shifting shamans, serpent imagery that predates the Aztecs' Quetzalcoatl by millennia, and even stylistic parallels to the Chavin culture of Peru. Most striking are the depictions of bearded figures, a physical trait uncommon among indigenous Mesoamericans, leading some researchers to speculate about contact with seafarers from across the Atlantic. The famous La Venta Offering No. 4, a collection of 16 figurines arranged in a semicircle, includes distinctively African and Eurasian facial features, fueling theories of transoceanic connections long before Columbus. Then there's the matter of their calendar. The Olmecs appear to have been the first in Mesoamerica to develop the long count system, a complex method of tracking time that later cultures like the Maya would perfect. This wasn't just a way to mark days, it was a cosmic clock capable of predicting eclipses and aligning with planetary cycles. The precision implies generations of astronomical observation, yet the Olmecs leave no evidence of earlier, cruder attempts. It's as if they inherited the system from someone else, a precursor culture lost to time. The most compelling clue might lie beneath their feet. At the Olmec site of Tres Zapotes, archaeologists uncovered a stela with a date equivalent to 32 BCE, thousands of years before their civilization supposedly began. Mainstream scholars dismiss it as a later addition or a miscarving, but what if it's a relic of something older? Similar anomalies crop up across Mesoamerica, from the Mayan city of El Mirador, which flourished centuries before its presumed timeline, to the controversial Olmec hieroglyphs at Cascajal Block, a script so developed it suggests a long period of prior use. Skeptics argue the Olmecs were simply brilliant innovators, their achievements the result of local genius. But when you stack the evidence, the sudden appearance of advanced urbanism, the shared motifs with distant cultures, the calendar's unexplained sophistication, it's hard to shake the feeling that we're missing a piece of the puzzle. Could the Olmecs have been the inheritors, not the originators, of Mesoamerican civilization? Their stone heads stare into the jungle as if guarding a secret, one that might rewrite not just the history of the Americas, but humanity's entire story. Deep in the sands of the Egyptian Sahara, where the desert now stretches barren and unyielding, lies a puzzle that rewrites the story of early human ingenuity. The Nabta Playa stone circle, a ring of weathered megaliths older than stone, hinged by at least 1,000 years, stands as a silent testament to a time when this was no desert at all, but a lush savanna teeming with life. What's astonishing isn't just its age, dating back over 7,000 years, but the precision with which its stones align to the summer solstice and the brightest stars in the night sky. These aren't random markers, they're evidence of a people who tracked celestial movements with startling accuracy, encoding knowledge of the cosmos into granite long before the pyramids rose at Giza. The sophistication of Nabta Playa's astronomy is matched only by the mystery of its builders. Unlike later civilizations that left behind written records or grand cities, these ancient astronomers left little beyond the stones themselves, yet their legacy speaks volumes. One slab, dubbed the calendar stone, tilts at an angle that aligns with the rising sun during the June solstice, while other monoliths form sightlines to Sirius, Orion's belt, and the star Dub in Ursa Major. These alignments wouldn't be replicated in Egypt for another 2 millennia. How did a nomadic cattle-herding culture, living on the edge of what's now Lake Nasser, develop such advanced celestial knowledge? The answer might lie in the environment they thrived in. Around 10,000 years ago, the Sahara was a green paradise crisscrossed by rivers and seasonal lakes. Nabta Playa's inhabitants weren't just surviving, they were flourishing, creating one of the earliest known examples of a ceremonial calendar tied to both astronomy and ecology. The stones may have doubled as a practical tool, signaling the arrival of monsoon rains critical for grazing lands. But here's where the puzzle deepens. The site also contains buried megaliths arranged in geometric patterns, including what appears to be a miniature star map of Orion's belt. These hidden features suggest a ritual purpose far beyond simple timekeeping, hinting at a spiritual or intellectual tradition we've only begun to decipher. Even more provocative are the cattle burials found nearby. Ritually interred in clay-lined chambers, these animals weren't just food sources, they were venerated, possibly as symbols of celestial beings or ancestors. This reverence for cattle echoes later Egyptian cosmology, where the sky goddess Hathor was depicted as a cow, her belly studded with stars. Could Nabta Playa's people be the unacknowledged precursors to pharaonic Egypt's cosmic mythology? The timing fits, as the Sahara dried up around 5,000 years ago, forcing populations toward the Nile. They may have carried their knowledge with them, seeding the beliefs that would later define one of history's greatest civilizations. The abrupt abandonment of Nabta Playa raises haunting questions. Climate change turned their green world to dust, but did they vanish or migrate? Recent genetic studies reveal that early Saharan populations shared ties with both sub-Saharan Africans and Neolithic Middle Easterners, suggesting a crossroads of cultures now lost to the dunes. Like Göbekli Tepe, Nabta Playa forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Complex societies may have risen, fallen, and been forgotten long before what we call history began. Their stones whisper of a time when humanity's first astronomers gazed at the same stars we do today, not as primitive stargazers, but as pioneers of a science we're still relearning. The desert guards their secrets closely, but each alignment, each buried artifact, pulls us closer to a past far richer than we ever imagined. Buried in a Romanian riverbank, the Tartaria tablets surfaced in 1961, 3 small clay pieces no larger than a palm, etched with symbols that ignited one of archaeology's fiercest debates. At first glance, they resembled primitive doodles, a horned figure, a goat, looping lines that could be vines or rivers. But look closer, and the markings reveal something startling, a potential system of writing, one that carbon dating suggests might be over 7,000 years old. If authentic, these tablets wouldn't just predate Sumerian cuneiform by nearly 2 millennia. They'd append the entire timeline of human literacy, hinting at a sophisticated culture flourishing in the Balkans while most of Europe was still nomadic. The symbols themselves are the heart of the mystery. Some researchers see parallels to later scripts. The horned figure echoes Sumerian depictions of the god Enki, while the looping lines resemble early Vincha symbols found across southeastern Europe. Others argue the tablets are ritual objects, not writing at all, perhaps votive offerings or even ancient board game pieces. The most provocative theory comes from those who claim the symbols encode a proto-language, a bridge between the abstract art of Paleolithic cave paintings and the structured writing systems of Mesopotamia. Imagine the implications, a network of interconnected cultures sharing ideas across continents millennia earlier than we've ever imagined. But skepticism runs deep. The tablets were discovered by archaeologist Nikolai Vlasser, who reported finding them near ancient human remains, a context that should have bolstered their credibility. Yet inconsistencies in the excavation records and the lack of similar finds in the region have fueled doubts. Could these be modern forgeries planted to rewrite history, or perhaps misdated artifacts from a much later period? The debate turns on a single question. Why, if writing existed in 6th millennium BC Romania, has no other evidence surfaced? Mainstream archaeology leans toward caution, noting that symbols alone don't constitute writing. The Vincha culture, to which the tablets are often linked, left behind thousands of similar markings on pottery and figurines, but none in sequences long enough to suggest language. Yet outliers persist. Independent linguists point to the tablet's deliberate groupings, symbols clustered as if forming words, and the presence of repeated characters, a hallmark of true writing systems. The most compelling counterargument isn't that the tablets are fake, but that we've misunderstood them entirely. What if they're not meant to convey speech, but something more esoteric? Astronomical notations, ownership marks, or even early musical notation. The controversy mirrors larger tensions in archaeology. Every few decades, an artifact emerges that challenges the accepted narrative. The Antikythera Mechanism, Göbekli Tepe, the recent discovery of gunpowder residue in ancient Indian texts. These finds force us to confront the gaps in our knowledge, the possibility that whole chapters of human innovation have been lost or misattributed. The Tartaria tablets might never be definitively solved, but their very existence whispers a tantalizing question. How much of history's first draft have we already erased? Until another clue surfaces, they remain enigmas baked in clay, waiting for a Rosetta Stone we've yet to uncover. The ancient Sanskrit texts of India sing praises of the mighty Saraswati River, a life-giving waterway described as surpassing all other rivers in grandeur. The Rig Veda, one of humanity's oldest known scriptures, paints vivid pictures of bustling cities along its banks, of poets and priests composing hymns by its flowing waters. For centuries, scholars dismissed these accounts as mythological, until satellite photography and geological surveys revealed something astonishing. Beneath the shifting sands of the Thar Desert lies the skeletal remains of a massive river system, its dry channels stretching over 900 miles from the Himalayas to the Arabian Sea. This isn't just any forgotten waterway. Its course matches the Vedic descriptions of the Saraswati with uncanny precision. What makes this discovery so groundbreaking is how it redefines our understanding of the Harappan civilization, also known as the Indus Valley culture. While archaeologists have long marveled at Mohenjo-Daro's urban planning and Harappa's advanced drainage systems, the traditional map of this civilization showed settlements clustered along the Indus River. But when researchers overlaid newly discovered Harappan sites with the ghostly outline of the ancient Saraswati, a startling pattern emerged. Over 60% of all known Harappan settlements, more than 1,200 sites, lie along this vanished river's path. Suddenly, the Indus Valley civilization appears to have been just one wing of a far more expansive culture, one that flourished across an area larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. The implications ripple outward like waves in a pond. This wasn't just a local culture, it was part of something much bigger. Artifacts found along the Saraswati's former banks include Mesopotamian cylinder seals, Central Asian lapis lazuli, and even traces of trade goods from as far away as the Oman Peninsula. The river itself may have served as a liquid highway connecting the Himalayan foothills to the sea, facilitating exchanges of ideas, goods, and technologies across vast distances. Consider the fire altars discovered at Kalibangan, perfectly aligned for astronomical observations, or the dockyards at Lothal that hint at sophisticated maritime trade. These aren't isolated achievements, they're pieces of a puzzle suggesting a civilization with global connections long before history's supposed first empires arose. Then there's the mystery of the Saraswati's disappearance. Geological evidence shows the river began drying up around 1900 BCE, its waters stolen by tectonic shifts that diverted its tributaries toward the Ganges. This environmental catastrophe coincides with the decline of Harappan urban centers, but here's where the story twists. Unlike other civilizations that collapsed when their rivers failed, the Saraswati's people didn't vanish, they adapted. Recent genetic studies reveal the modern populations of northwest India carry significant ancestry from these ancient river dwellers. Their knowledge may have dispersed too, seeding the Vedic traditions that would later give rise to Hinduism. The river died, but its legacy flowed into new channels. Could the Saraswati civilization be another thread in our global tapestry of lost knowledge? Its cities bear striking similarities to contemporaneous cultures. The water management systems echo those of ancient Crete. The standardized weights and measures mirror Mesopotamian practices. Even the unicorn motif found on Harappan seals appears in distant Mesopotamian art. These parallels could be coincidence, or they could hint at connections we're only beginning to trace. The river's story reminds us that the maps of ancient history are still being drawn, and with each new discovery, the boundaries of what we thought possible keep expanding. The Saraswati may have vanished from the land, but its waters still murmur beneath the sands, whispering secrets about a past far more interconnected than we ever imagined. From the icy fjords of Scandinavia to the sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, flood myths rise like a chorus across human history, stories so eerily similar, they seem torn from the same ancient manuscript. The Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh tells of a vengeful god unleashing torrents to cleanse the earth, while the indigenous Kayich Maya describe a great deluge sent to punish humanity's arrogance. In ancient China, the legend of Gun and Yu speaks of cosmic waters unleashed by heaven, and halfway across the world, the Aboriginal peoples of Australia recount how the ancestral rainbow serpent flooded the land to purify it. These aren't just isolated tales, they're fragments of a collective memory, a haunting refrain passed down through generations. What's striking isn't just the universality of these stories, it's their specificity. Many describe more than just water. The Popol Vuh, the sacred text of the Maya, speaks of a black rain that fell for days, while the Norse Völuspá mentions a twilight of the gods, where the earth sinks beneath the sea and fire engulfs the sky. These details align unsettlingly with modern geological discoveries. Take the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which suggests a comet or asteroid bombardment 12,000 years ago could have triggered massive flooding, wildfires, and a sudden return to Ice Age conditions. Sediment cores from Greenland and North America reveal layers of nanodiamonds and melted glass, evidence of extreme heat and pressure consistent with a cosmic impact. Could these myths be the human echo of that cataclysm? But floods aren't the only disasters etched into cultural memory. The Minoan civilization's sudden collapse around 1600 BC coincides with the eruption of Thera, a volcanic blast so powerful it dwarfed Krakatoa. Ashfall buried Akrotiri, a city on Santorini, preserving vivid frescoes of daily life frozen in time. Meanwhile, Egyptian records from the same period describe 9 days of darkness, and Chinese texts note yellow fog and dimmed suns. Even Plato's Atlantis, often dismissed as allegory, may hold a kernel of truth, a distorted retelling of Thera's destruction, where a maritime empire vanished beneath the waves in a single day and night. The real question isn't whether these events happened, it's why their retellings are so consistent across cultures that supposedly never interacted. The Hopi of North America speak of a sky that rained fire, mirroring the Greek myth of Phaethon, who lost control of the sun chariot and scorched the earth. Both stories describe celestial chaos, and both attribute it to divine wrath. Coincidence, or could these narratives stem from a shared ancestral experience, a trauma so profound it was woven into the fabric of humanity's oldest stories? Archaeology offers tantalizing support. In Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, carvings of headless humans and scorpions might depict celestial disasters, while the ruins of Çatalhöyük feature murals of a volcanic eruption, complete with exploding mountains and fleeing figures. These aren't abstract symbols, they're eyewitness accounts in stone. Even more compelling are the global parallels in survival strategies. From the Andes to the Himalayas, cultures developed flood-resistant architecture, raised homes, granaries on stilts, and subterranean storage, as if anticipating disaster. The most provocative theory that these myths aren't just metaphors but the shattered remains of a proto-civilization's history. Imagine a network of early societies, linked by trade or shared knowledge, collapsing under natural disasters. Survivors would carry fragments of that world with them, their stories mutating over millennia into the flood myths we know today. The parallels aren't just in the disasters themselves, but in the solutions. The Sumerian Ziusudra, the biblical Noah, and the Hindu Manu all build arks or vessels to weather the storm. That's not just storytelling, it's survival wisdom encoded in myth. Whether these narratives point to a single global civilization or simply humanity's shared vulnerability to catastrophe, one thing is clear: our ancestors weren't just making up tales. They were preserving warnings, etching them into oral tradition with the urgency of those who'd seen the world unmade. And as we uncover more geological and archaeological evidence, the line between legend and history grows ever thinner, revealing a past far more turbulent and far more interconnected than we ever dreamed. Imagine a story so powerful, so vital, that it survives not just decades or centuries but millennia, passed from one generation to the next through song, chant, and spoken word alone. This is the astonishing resilience of oral tradition, a living library of human experience often dismissed by modern scholars as myth or folklore. Yet from the Aboriginal Dreamtime stories of Australia to the Norse sagas of Scandinavia, these narratives carry details so precise they've been corroborated by geology, astronomy, and archaeology. The Klamath tribe of North America, for example, recounts the eruption of Mount Mazama nearly 7,700 years ago in their legend of Lau and Skell, describing the mountain's collapse with eerie accuracy centuries before written records existed. How could a preliterate society preserve such a specific memory unless it was rooted in real, witnessed events? Oral traditions aren't just campfire tales, they're sophisticated data storage systems. Polynesian navigators memorized star paths, ocean currents, and wind patterns across thousands of miles, guiding their voyages without maps or compasses. The Inuit preserved intricate ice conditions and animal migration routes through songs and stories, knowledge critical for survival in the Arctic. These examples reveal a pattern. Cultures without writing often developed more precise methods of oral transmission than we've credited them for. The Hindu Vedas, for instance, were preserved for over 3,000 years through recitation techniques so exact, modern linguists find fewer errors than in centuries-old written manuscripts. If these traditions could accurately preserve sacred texts, why not historical events? The most tantalizing clues emerge when oral histories align across continents. The Dogon's knowledge of Sirius B is mirrored in Egyptian temple astronomy, while flood myths from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica share uncanny details. Not just water, but warnings, survival crafts, and even rainbow symbols of renewal. The Maori of New Zealand tell of the ancestral homeland Hawaii, a land swallowed by the sea, while the Welsh speak of Cantref Gwaelod, a kingdom lost to rising tides. These aren't generic disaster tales, they're specific accounts that mirror post-Ice Age sea level rise. Could they be the fractured remnants of a shared ancestral memory? Skeptics argue that oral traditions mutate over time, like a game of telephone spanning generations. But research in cultural anthropology reveals the opposite. Core details in sacred or survival narratives often remain stable, guarded by ritual and reinforced through mnemonic devices. The griots of West Africa, for example, train for decades to recite genealogies spanning centuries without deviation. In Australia, Aboriginal songlines encode navigation routes so accurately, they've been used to rediscover ancient trade paths buried under desert sands. These systems weren't fragile, they were engineered for accuracy. The real breakthrough comes when science validates these stories. In Canada, the Heiltsuk Nation's oral history of a coastal village frozen in time led archaeologists to uncover a 13,000-year-old settlement, one of the oldest in North America. Similarly, the Gunditjmara people's tales of volcanic eruptions were confirmed by geologists studying the Budgebim lava flows. With each discovery, the line between myth and history blurs further. What if these traditions hold more than isolated truths? What if, like shards of a shattered mirror, they reflect pieces of a larger, forgotten whole? The Hopi speak of a previous world destroyed by fire, the Aztecs of 4 suns before our own, and the Hindu Puranas describe cycles of creation and destruction lasting millions of years. These aren't just creation stories, they're potential records of cataclysms that reshaped humanity, preserved by cultures we've long underestimated. The irony is profound. The very societies branded primitive by early historians may have been the most meticulous keepers of our collective past. Their voices, carried on the winds of time, challenge us to listen closer and to reconsider what we think we know about the dawn of civilization. As we stand at the edge of this vast archaeological puzzle, one thing becomes undeniably clear: human history is far richer, far stranger, and far more interconnected than any textbook could possibly capture. The megalithic precision of Puma Punku, the celestial wisdom encoded in Nabta stones, the eerie similarities between flood myths separated by oceans, these aren't just random anomalies. They're threads in a tapestry that might rewrite our understanding of civilization itself. For every skeptic who sees coincidence, there's a ruin that defies explanation. For every mainstream theory about independent cultural development, there's a genetic trail or linguistic echo suggesting otherwise. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, not with a single, globe-spanning super-civilization, but perhaps with a network of advanced cultures trading knowledge across continents long before we thought possible. Imagine Bronze Age sailors following ocean currents to distant shores, or Neolithic astronomers sharing star charts across mountain ranges. The evidence, though fragmented, paints a picture of a world far more dynamic than we've been taught. What's most compelling isn't just the physical artifacts, it's the persistence of memory. From the Dogon's Sirius lore to the Olmec's sudden sophistication, these stories and structures endure like fingerprints on the windows of time. They challenge us to ask uncomfortable questions. How much have we lost? How many libraries of knowledge were swallowed by rising seas or buried beneath desert sands? And if civilizations have risen and fallen before, what does that mean for our own? This isn't about rewriting history for the sake of spectacle. It's about honoring the ingenuity of our ancestors. Whether deciphering the Indus script or studying the acoustics of ancient chambers, each discovery reveals a humanity that's always been curious, creative, and capable of extraordinary collaboration. The real mystery isn't whether advanced cultures existed in prehistory, but why we've been so reluctant to consider it. So where does that leave us? Not with definitive answers, but with something even more valuable, a sense of wonder. The past isn't a locked door, it's a conversation, one that grows richer with every unearthed artifact and every reinterpreted myth. Whether you're convinced by the mounting evidence or remain healthily skeptical, one truth remains: our journey to understand the past has only just begun. And who knows, the next great discovery might be waiting just beneath our feet, or hidden in plain sight, ready to turn everything we thought we knew upside down. Now it's your turn. Do these fragments point to a forgotten chapter of human achievement, or are we connecting dots that were never meant to align? Drop your thoughts below, and if you've enjoyed this deep dive into history's shadows, hit that subscribe button. After all, the past has plenty more secrets to reveal, and we're just getting started.